On this episode, we're joined by Andre Taylor to talk about leadership, what it is, how to learn about it, and most importantly, why it's relevant to us as water professionals, no matter where we are in our careers. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro. A little bit of a different format today. We have a Skype interview, we have a guest, as you can see, Andre Taylor. Andre, welcome along.
My pleasure.
So the topic of discussion today, if you know Andre, you might already be able to guess this. Andre has over the years done a bunch of work in the water leadership space. And in a moment, we'll get in and define what that is. So we've made the time today to talk a little bit about that, dig into what that is, why it's of interest, and we'll take it from there. We'll see where we go because it's a conversation and we never know what's going to pop up. So Andre, for us to get into this, why don't you take a second to tell us, introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and then, as some context, can you maybe define what water leadership means? Because it might not be what people immediately thought when they heard that term.
Yeah, happy to, Jack. It's always good to start with a definition, isn't it? But a little bit about me. I call myself a water practitioner, a sustainability practitioner, and a leadership specialist these days. So my kind of career has evolved a bit. I have 4 roles at the moment. I'm the leadership specialist at the International Water Centre, so I run their leadership development activities. Also work as a lecturer and course coordinator at University of New South Wales, teaching their Masters MBA students. This year I'm working with Monash University with a new leadership course with their Masters of Environment and Sustainability, and I do a bit of consulting. So these days, probably 90% of my work is in leadership development.
Yeah, so we're clearly talking to the right person here for this.
I hope so. But in terms of what is leadership, the definition that most people use these days, a contemporary definition, is that it's not a position, it's a process of influence that delivers 3 outcomes, and it's sometimes called the DAC model. D stands for direction, a shared vision about where we're going for a project, a team, an organisation. A stands for alignment, so everyone's working together and all the tasks are coordinated. And C stands for commitment to group success, so everyone puts the team ahead of the individual. And so when we look at leadership that way, we soon realise it's not a position, it's a process, it's a set of behaviours, and it's usually a group-based process with different people playing different roles at different times. And in the water sector, it's relevant because we've got a lot of change to drive. Business as usual just isn't satisfactory in many circumstances. If you think, for example, about how to build a water-sensitive city, we've got a lot of change that needs to occur, things that need to move from the current state to a new state. So in that context, we need people with influence skills, the ability to start and drive change processes, and there's lots of different leadership roles, so there's lots of things to learn about, how do we play those roles well.
Yeah, and so because of those many different roles, this is potentially a topic that's applicable to anyone, whether you are at the top of an organisation, whether you're a middle manager or whether you've just started your career. There's different niches to tap in and different roles to play within this bigger leadership banner.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Sometimes when people come to a leadership program, for example, the first thing we do is try to tease apart the concept of authority. A CEO or a minister has authority and leadership because they're 2 separate concepts. And if we don't separate them, sometimes people have a view that I've got to have lots of authority to be a leader. And we like to get over that barrier quickly because, as you say, there's many different roles. You can be a thought leader, no staff, very little authority, and make a huge difference. A person I like to quote a bit here is Rachel Carson, who was the author of Silent Spring. Wrote this influential book in the 1960s, and it led to a whole range of changes in environmental legislation and the phasing out of persistent chemicals used at that time. And, she didn't have any authority, no position power. She wasn't a CEO, but she had a lot of expert power. She was a great communicator, really good scientist. So she was highly influential without authority. So I think if we get to the mindset that there's many different leadership roles, some of which have authority, some don't, and finding the right role for us is a key to making progress.
Gotcha. So now that we've got a context on, I suppose, the fact that this can apply to everyone, maybe we should then take a step into, well, why might it be of interest to people? And the way I love to dig into this sort of thing through story. So what I'd like to ask you is, when for you did this topic of leadership first kind of pop up on your radar as of something of interest? Can you place us like where you were in your career and what was happening that you went, and take it from there?
Yeah, I definitely can. So it was I can't put an exact date on it, but it was late 1990s. I was working in Brisbane. I was a team leader for water quality management in Brisbane City Council at the time. And, there was a lot of good things going on. And it was a classic example of leadership to address a complex challenge. We see it in the water sector, we see it in sustainability contexts, where you have a lot of different people playing different leadership roles. So we had a Lord Mayor with a lot of authority, making decisions about healthy waterways, upgrading sewage treatment plants and establishing report cards, and the healthy waterways got established. We had thought leaders in our universities driving change and engaging the media. We had champions working at different levels. We had political advisors. So there was a group of key people, many of whom are still active today, working together to drive change. That definition I gave you, the DAC, direction was there, alignment of all those activities, and then commitment through the kind of healthy waterways mission. So, and I was a very small part of that, but I was in there and I could see, wow, something's really special is happening here. And then when I looked at other places that I'd worked and other parts of Australia, very, very little was happening around healthy waterways. So I started to get interested in this phenomenon of leadership as one ingredient for driving change, and I wanted to learn more. So I started to connect with some people that had an interest in the social dimensions of water management, and Rebecca Brown was emerging at the time. You'd know of Rebecca, I'm sure, at Monash University. So started to work with her more and more, and that led to a PhD in leadership development, but more particularly the champion phenomenon in the water sector, and that's when I really started to switch from a technical person to a social scientist and a leadership development specialist. So
got you.
That's the story.
Yeah, when you first started to get a taste that there was something happening that was, well aligned in this common direction and, people working together with commitment, was it like, were you aware of the term leadership at that point? Or was it a case of you were aware of something's happening and you went and searched and happened to find that the term applied? What was the order of that?
Yeah, well, the term was definitely thrown around at that stage, and I had a basic understanding of what leadership is, and, I lost count of the number of workshops I've been to where people talk about the value of champion. So looking back, it was a very basic knowledge of leadership and different roles. So I've learned a lot since then, and I followed various threads of learning around leadership and the champion phenomenon, and different leadership roles and different bodies of literature and research that all adds value. But I have to say, looking back, it was a pretty basic understanding, and I've certainly learned a lot since then. And the fun thing is I'm still learning. There's still so much to learn. It's quite a complex social phenomenon, leadership. So there's no shortage of things to learn, and I'm very confident in saying I'm never going to master it. So for me, one of my core values is learning. So that's good. I'm in a place where I'm learning every day, and hopefully I'm helping others to learn as well.
Yeah, gotcha. I find it really interesting, and I can relate to the fact that you mentioned learning continuously, because for me, whether it was initially delving into sports and bike riding, or more recently it's like professional in the water sector, the more time I spend in this space, the more I find that I don't know, and that's actually nice because it keeps things interesting. It allows I get joy from learning and from digging in deeper and deeper and deeper. So I can certainly relate to what you're saying.
Yeah, and it's important for leadership development as well. I think JFK, there's a famous quote that says, I won't quote him directly because I can't remember it, but basically says, leadership and learning are indispensable to one another. So if you want to be an effective leader, you've got to learn by doing, get feedback, continuously try new approaches. So that mindset of being a lifelong learner is critical if you want to build your leadership skills.
Yeah, and this then ties into all these concepts, like the concepts of growth versus adaptive mindsets, and growth versus fixed mindsets. Sorry, that's from the book Grit. I'm forgetting the author's name right this second, but the concept of being the fact that we can grow as people right throughout life, and if we're open to that, then it opens up all these doors. So, okay, so you've become aware of this leadership concept as something that's useful. When was it that you then started to first actively try and apply some concepts? So it's one thing to learn, but it's then another to start to apply. When does that phase start to kick in for you? And more specifically, what does that look like?
Yeah. It actually happened during my PhD because I was lucky to get some industry funding to do my PhD as kind of mid-career researcher. And in order to make my PhD kind of practical and kind of get a return on the investment for the funding, I added a kind of extra component, which was doing some research about the champion phenomenon in the water sector and then taking that knowledge and turning it into a leadership development program, which we ran in Sydney, and then evaluating it to death. So I apologise to anyone who participated in that program. We ran a lot of evaluations. So it was part of my research was to take the knowledge, build a leadership development program that was customised, run it, evaluate it. And so for me, that was the first time I actually started applying that knowledge. And it was, from a professional development perspective, it was great because it got me into coaching, mentoring, facilitating, etc. So it got me comfortable. And then that led on to a role with the International Water Centre where we built the IWC's Water Leadership Program, which is now in its 6th years, which was a much more advanced program, but it was a stepping stone to that. And these days, I do a lot of different things: coaching, mentoring, short courses, big programs, university teaching, and university courses. So lots of different development, designs and activities. But it all stems from that PhD, I have to say.
Yep. So I'm wondering if there's as you described that, I wonder if there's a distinction here. Maybe the distinction's only in my mind here. But was there a difference between, I feel that what you described there is you beginning to apply these leadership concepts that you were learning in a teaching space, but if you started to become aware broadly of this leadership concept, even as far back as when you were at Brisbane City Council, did you start applying any of it personally to try and to your own practice? It's like, okay, so the distinction is your own practice versus then teaching and helping others practice. What did your own practice look like there?
Yeah, so definitely, I'd like to think that I try to pick up and apply what I'm learning. So I do that as well, both in terms of self-leadership, which is the foundation for all aspects of leadership and how I might lead teams and influence people. I'm certainly not perfect. I'm a work in progress like everyone else, but one advantage I do have is I've got a lot of tools and approaches at my disposal. The fact, for example, I run my own consulting business is good for me because it means that I've got to build networks and lead project teams and engage in a whole range of leadership activities. Same with some of my roles at university. I'm a course coordinator, so I have class facilitators I have to lead. So for me, I have to practice leadership personally as well as help others. So for me, that keeps me a bit grounded. And it reminds me how hard it is at times.
Yeah.
So that my expectations aren't too high.
Yeah. So if someone's coming into it, so say if someone's let's put this in the context. Perhaps my example. So I joined the industry about 7 years ago. I was at Logan City Council. And in my particular case, I was out there looking at the condition of all their stormwater treatment systems. And the first time that I can relate to something that fits under this leadership banner was that I noticed that of all the stormwater treatment systems they had, there was a small but not insignificant portion that were in good condition. And when I tracked back into the history of them, every single one of them, I could find someone who I later found was fitting under the champion role. And this was my first taste into it that made me go, there's something in this, and maybe made me a little bit more interested in it. So if someone's had a similar experience and got a taste of it and then wants to start to dig into it more, wants to apply, maybe they want to apply something or they want to learn first, where would you recommend that people go to get their first taste of it? Obviously, like they can go deep. There's like the IWC course and all sorts, but if they want a first taste,
yeah, well, there's a bit of a menu of leadership development activities you can engage in. So the full-on leadership development program, like the IWC one, which is 9 months, is kind of a gold-plated program, and it's not cheap. So you've got to be really committed and ready for that sort of program.
Yep.
But down the track, there are some other options which might be stepping stones. For example, we currently run a 5-week online team leadership course with the AWA. So it's an Australian Water Association and the International Water Centre very low cost course. That's a good stepping stone for young water professionals. Probably even lower than that, the first step I'd suggest is mentoring, informal mentoring. So find some of those people who are doing some great things. Ask to buy them a coffee, have lunch with them, and then start to ask some questions and do a lot of listening. So that, for many people, that's probably the easiest stepping stone into learning about leadership. And mentoring is always a great method. You know, for example, in the IWC Water Leadership Program, we provide group mentors, but we also require all of our participants to have at least 3 local mentoring conversations during the program, and we train them on how to set those up. So, you know, it's high value, low cost, so it's a good starting point. The other thing is just to read widely or watch TED Talks if you're not a reader, but there's a lot of information out there. I think the key is finding the good stuff. So, you know, I'm always happy to recommend some books or some papers, both about leadership in the water sector, which is a very small body of literature, but some of the kind of classic books, like The Leadership Challenge, for example, or some of John Cotter's books in the broader field of leadership are a good read, particularly those that are written by people who managed to write kind of bestsellers, but they come from a research background. I have a fondness for their work because it's trusted. There's empirical research behind it, but they communicate well. So
yeah, it's bringing the best.
So in summary, mentoring, reading, and then those short courses would be a good place to start before jumping into a big leadership program.
Yep. Okay. I like it. And for anyone thinking about the mentoring space, I've certainly found over the years that just how receptive people are. Like, often you might want some advice or some thought by someone who's in a position of, you know, what might look like in a high up position, but how receptive people often are to that request. So and actually one of the best bits of advice I ever heard is sometimes it's not necessarily even going for the most famous person. So like just as an example, if you looked around their industry and went, who's really high profile? Oh, maybe I'll ask Tony Wong, for example. Yeah. Tony is a CEO of a large research organization, maybe is at the really busy end of things. But if you then look at, well, who's the next person? Who's the person who spends a lot of time with Tony, or is like the next tier down? That's a good way to get someone who's got a heap of experience, but also maybe isn't getting, you know, the huge amounts of time pressure. It's the equivalent of going, should I ask Michael Phelps for swimming lessons, or should I ask the 3rd best swimmer in the world? They're both probably pretty good.
Yeah, or the person that's just retired. So, you know, I think there are some key steps. You know, the first is being clear on the sort of experience you want to tap into. You know, so be clear on that, and that'll give you guidance about who to ask. But they've got to have the time for you. So recently retired or semi-retired executives, for example, are often a really good mentoring option because they want to help people that have got a lot of experience and have got a bit more time. So thinking about that and then making it very easy for them, you know, going to them, buying them coffee. And, you know, most people I work with, you know, prefer an informal mentoring arrangement, so they don't try to sign someone up to, you know, monthly meetings for 6 months. And they might not even use the M word. They'll just say, look, they might knock on the door of a Rob Skinner or someone and say, Rob, you know, you've got skills in this area. Can I have coffee with you? I'd love to ask you some questions. And, you know, I work with a lot of people who do this, and most of the time they say, wow, you know, they said yes and it was fantastic, and I'm really thrilled. Now I want to work hard because they've helped me, and I want to go away and use that material. Occasionally it doesn't work, so you've just got to say, okay, that didn't work out. There wasn't the chemistry I was hoping for, or they just weren't available. But I'm not going to give up. I'll just go to someone else. So for me, I think having the courage to knock on a door or ask someone is a key step. But mentoring is a really high value, low cost leadership development activity. Yep,
I like it. I'd like to dig in just a little bit more into I suppose why people might become interested in this space. So you've now had a lot of, you said 6 years for the IWC program, so you've had quite a number of students come through that now.
Yeah, I think it's about 140.
That's a good number. What's the are there any particular trends as to like the stories as to how and why those students have become interested in this space?
There are. There's probably a paper in it someday. While everyone's unique, you know, everyone's got a unique story, there are some common themes I see, and I'll briefly summarise the ones I'm aware of. The first is a desire to be like a T-shaped water professional. Are you familiar with that concept? So you have like the vertical is some deep knowledge. You might be a hydrologist or engineer or a planner, and then you want to broaden your knowledge. Often that happens, maybe late 20s or in your 30s. So you want to start to build management skills, leadership skills, understanding of politics, whatever, so you can collaborate more within multidisciplinary teams. So sometimes people will go off and do a master's, like a mid-career master's at that stage to do that broadening.
Yep.
Coming to a leadership program like the IWC Water Leadership Program is another strategy to say, I really want to strengthen influence and team leadership and a whole bunch networking, all those sort of communication skills to my professional profile. So that's one we see. And another one is the new team leader. So they've shifted from the individual specialist to a team leader. Either they're leading a team of staff or they're leading a lot of cross-boundary project teams, and they realise they're out of their depth. They're struggling.
Yep.
And they might not like it, they might say, is this for me? I'm not sure. So they need some skills and confidence. So we see that. The third one is usually an older participant who's knocking on the door of executive roles. So they're in middle management, they've got a big team, and they're prepping for the next stage. And then the last thing I see is people that want time to reflect on their career because they're at a crossroads and they need some thinking time, and they want to reflect on their values, and they want to talk to a mentor and a coach, and they want to do some deep reflection before making a big decision about whether to change roles. And we see quite a lot of those people as well.
Interesting. I wasn't expecting the last one. The first three, I was like, oh yeah, I can see that. The last one's a little bit of a surprise for me, but it's interesting to hear.
Yeah. I'm not sure that some people are actually aware they're in that category. They might just intuitively say, that program is attractive for me. But I think they want the space to reflect and interact with others and get some feedback from their colleagues and clarify their core values and maybe work with, say, a coach or a distinguished water leader as a mentor to give them confidence to say, it's time for you to fly the nest and move on to another role. It may not mean leave the organisation, but go to another role. So we see a few of those.
Yeah.
And it often, nearly always, it's a happy ending. Because they have time to think and make some good decisions and get good advice and get some new skills. So in some cases, it can be a real transformational approach.
Yeah, that fits in with something. I mean, so this is going to be a slight little tangent here, but something that I've been thinking about recently is how to balance the times of, obviously, at times you need to go really deep into either projects or learning of technical skills, but also then balancing that reflection time. And I've certainly recently been thinking of this like an analogy of an accordion. So you've got an accordion player that, squeezing in and then pulling apart, and now trying to begin to think of my career like this. So at times, and this can vary between projects or particular activities, but at times squeezing in and going really deep, but then deliberately coming back up for air again before diving in, and maybe it dives into a different area and comes back up. But so I can relate to the space being useful for people who've come out of working really, really hard in particular areas.
Yeah, well, I think it reflects the modern workplace as well. The 21st century knowledge worker is time poor. They work 24/7 in terms of being on call. You've always got your phone there. So having some time when the phone's off to really reflect, filter through some feedback from your colleagues, work with a coach. It's a bit of a luxury to many of us to do that. And, it can really be a great time to make some key decisions about where you want to head. The average age for people in our program is 33, so they're often in that space where they've got a fair bit of experience. They might be thinking about having a young family. They might be thinking about where to next for me in my career. So that thinking time, supported thinking time, is very valuable to them. Yeah,
I like it. Okay, slight change of track here, and we'll wrap this up soon. But something that I want to dig into, and if this is this can be a leadership example, or this could be a different example. But so we can learn from both things that go right in practice and things that don't go so well. And a question that I've heard asked, and I love the way this is asked, which is essentially, do you have any favourite failures from professional practice? And what I mean by that is, do you have any examples of where, maybe it's in this space, where things haven't gone quite right, but out of it, because you've learnt something. Maybe it's learning, based on what we said earlier, but
Yeah.
you've learnt well out of it. So at the end of it, you're like, that was a failure, but you know what? I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for raising that. Yeah, quite honestly, I don't see these setbacks as failures, because you do, like you say, you learn things from them, and sometimes they can be really important turning points. There's a couple that spring to mind. One is an old example, and one is a very modern or contemporary example that's still on my desk.
Okay.
The old one was when I was in the early 90s. I joined a large international consulting firm when I first moved to Brisbane. It didn't work out. I wasn't happy there.
Mm-hmm.
Just wasn't motivated. I was there for 6 months, and I got a scholarship to do my master's, which was a bit of an escape. It was a bit like joining a leadership program. It was some thinking time, build some new skills, and work out what I wanted to do.
Yep.
And so that was a failure in terms of a career move. But in retrospect, it was very valuable for me to clarify what I wanted to do, and it prompted me to go back to university, learn some new skills, and I wanted to be a sustainability practitioner. I still am one of those.
Yep.
And it helped me clarify my core values, which, I think I was in my 20s then, so I hadn't done a lot of work on that. So failure, well, setback, yes, but it was also really important to get me on the right track. So that's one. The other one that's more recent is, for about 3 years now, I've been trying to get up a low-cost online leadership course for people in developing countries who can't afford to get into a more expensive face-to-face course or program.
Yep.
And that relates to my core values about enabling others and helping people. And I've been spectacularly unsuccessful, I suppose, over the 3 years. It's not running yet. I've designed it, I've costed it, I've got a prospectus, but it hasn't gone anywhere. And I suppose what I've learned from that, I haven't given up, so I'm still going. But what I've learned from that is to be patient, to be a bit flexible, and look for windows of opportunities. There might be a partner or a new funding opportunity. So I'm confident it's going to happen, but it's been much slower than I would like. But it's been a good learning process to me about the importance of context. The right partner and the right timing, and being patient and flexible and persistent in the long term. So watch this space. You never know, it might take off. But
yeah, well, fingers crossed it does. So
yeah, and ironically, it's a leadership challenge. It's a classic leadership challenge that I haven't delivered on yet. But
yep.
It's only a failure if you give up.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's very true. Yes, I like it. Okay, so bring this to an end. Is there any angle or any topic that I haven't come in at this that you want to add, things that we should have shared with people?
Probably the only thing I would say that for many practitioners that I work with in the water sector is they start off building their technical skills. They might be an engineer or an ecologist, and then they start to build management skills, time management, project management, and then think about leadership skills, influence, communication, leading teams. And so that's quite a natural progression. And so I just wanted to flag that for many people. You might currently be just focusing on your technical skills and knowledge, and that's fine, but just be aware that typically there's a process about scaffolding or broadening your T-shaped professional to include a variety of management skills, integrating skills, systems thinking, then communication, influence, leadership. So please be aware that most people recognise that happens in a sequence, and it may happen to you.
Yeah. Does it have to happen in that, or so I get building the technical skills because we've all come out of uni and end up in these technical jobs. Yeah. I can certainly see how that's first. Does the management have to come before the leadership?
No, it doesn't happen. It just seems to happen that way. I'd like to think that we learn leadership a bit earlier than we do. There's some programs that are run in schools which are great, give people basic leadership skills in various forums. So, it can happen. It can happen in the school. It can happen at university. But for some reason, we tend to leave leadership development fairly late. I actually don't think we should do that. The earlier the better from my perspective. You get a better return on investment, and people aren't entrenched in bad habits. It's one of the reasons I like working with kind of so-called emerging leaders. I spend most of my time there. But it just tends to happen. Think of a typical engineering career progression through school, university, first job. you tend to focus on those technical skills first, then project management, time management, then leadership. So the earlier you can start, the better, but recognise that if you're on that pathway, think about when you're going to start to supplement those technical skills with management and leadership skills.
Yeah, and I see it as a potential antidote to, that situation. I certainly experienced this about 2 years into my career. Came out of uni, developing these technical skills we're talking about, got all these ideas and this enthusiasm to do stuff, and at some point you run up against the reality of the real world, and the stuff doesn't move as quick as you want. And for me, like 2 years in, there was a really tough time there, and I see the leadership stuff, although I didn't actively and deliberately go and study it, although I did go and do some reading, I see this space and the sorts of skills you might learn in this space as a potential antidote to that tough time and that roadblock, because it opens up a set of skills. Instead of you're trying to just blast through it with only technical skills, it potentially opens up a whole bunch of other angles from which to get past that and to keep that enthusiasm to change the world, essentially.
Yeah, and that realisation that, hey, I need another set of skills here to make progress is one where people say, I need to be a T-shaped water professional. I need to broaden the cross piece to make change. And a lot of people are motivated by making a positive difference. So that's often a point where people will say, okay, I need to either get a mentor, get into a leadership program, do my masters that have some leadership in it. So I need some more skills.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, let's wrap it up there. Andre, thank you for taking the time to have a chat. Thank you for also being patient. I know we took a couple of different dates and a couple of different times to try and set this up, but for finally persisting and making it happen. If people want to find out more about you or the programs, are there any particular web links or spots they should go, terms they should Google to find out more?
Yeah. In terms of the International Water Centre, just Google the International Water Centre, click on the leadership links, and you'll find a connection to me, or contact me through LinkedIn is another way to connect with me directly.
Okay, I like it. Andre, thank you for taking the time. And for everyone watching, thank you for tuning in. We will see you next time.